Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome to Theology at the Threshold. My name is Cole Burks, and this is my contextual project for my master's degree. I am going to be taking topics that I am studying in school and putting them into podcast form so that we can learn together. I want to make these things really accessible for you and for those who are interested in knowing what it's like to kind of be in seminary school. And so thank you so much for jumping on and listening today. I hope this encourages you. I hope you find this helpful. And most of all, I hope this deepens your walk with God. Welcome to season 1. All right, everybody. Welcome back to episode number 3. We just got done talking about active and passive spirituality a little bit. And we just want to dive a little bit more into how you sustain the move of the Spirit, the work of the Spirit in your life in the context of spiritual formation. So, here at our church, we use this phrase often. We use the phrase ways of life. In fact, we have a huge wall.
Yes, we do.
In our church
Yes,
that has
we do.
ways of life on the top of it. And then it has those, what ways of life that we tend to follow underneath it. And so I want to really talk about ways of life for just a moment. And so just initially, do you have any questions that maybe the people might be asking?
I think a big one when we talk about something like ways of life, especially, in this world of, rejecting legalism and all this stuff. What is a way of life? Why do we use that terminology? Why, how do we settle on that? And how do we sustain like a way of life?
So I think that's a great question, especially as it pertains to legalism.
Yeah.
So what people say often is they'll come at systems and structure so hard, right? But in fact, they have a system and a structure for everything.
Absolutely, yeah.
Everything that they do. From the way that you get up in the morning and take a shower, brush your teeth, put your clothes on, go to work, punch the clock, go home. There's structure to your life.
Yeah.
There's a system that you follow every single day.
Right.
Whether you want to admit it or not, you are a creature of habit. You probably go to bed the same time every night. You probably are more this is actually psychological. You are probably more likely to eat at certain times of the day.
Yep.
But a rule of life, I read an article, or ways of life. I read an article recently that put it like this. Ways of life and rules of life are like, have you ever been skydiving before, Brandon?
No.
Okay, Brandon's not going skydiving.
I prefer to be in a plane or be on the ground. I don't want to go from the plane to the ground without having the proper procedures of landing in between them.
Understood. So this is the way that I like to describe it best. And maybe this will help people as it pertains to, is it legalistic, is it not, whatever. When you go skydiving, you have a parachute, but you also have a safety parachute, okay? What makes have you ever heard someone talk about skydiving before? There's two different types of people in the world. One of them is sitting at this table. Maybe I'm also maybe one of these types of people as well. They'll say this, skydiving is the most freeing feeling in the world.
No.
You don't know those people?
Well, I mean, I do know those people. I just reject their mentality.
Okay. So, for instance, Becca and Sarah went on their little skydiving experience.
Yeah, you think so cool too, don't you?
Yeah. They did their little skydiving thing. And they're like, oh my gosh, it was so amazing, it's so fun. The only reason that it's fun And the only reason that it's amazing is because you have a parachute.
Right.
If not, you are moving at a speed that will kill you if you hit the ground.
You reach terminal velocity. Yep. What that means is you cannot be falling any faster.
Right. And not only can you not be falling any faster, you will die if you hit the ground.
Right. Or if you somehow manage to survive, which some people have.
Yeah.
It is not good.
So what a rule of life is it's the parachute.
Right.
Or our ways of life. They are our parachute in a world that tries to push us to a pace that will corrupt our souls and kill us.
Right.
That's how I think it's I think it's so important to think about it in that way. And so don't think about it as like these are things that I have to do. It's like no. You don't have to wear a parachute and jump out of a plane.
That's true.
But you'll die.
Yep.
Or you're going to be seriously injured. You don't have to follow ways of life, but it's going to be deeply problematic for you because, listen, you're going to be formed. You're going to be spiritually formed.
Right.
Either way.
Yep.
You're either going to be formed by the ways of Jesus and whatever community that you're a part of, they have their language for that.
Right.
Or you're going to be formed by whatever speaks to your soul the most often and whatever you take in the most often. And in our culture, God knows what that is.
Right.
And I think it's important, though, to talk about not only what a rule of life is or ways of life are and what they do. They're the parachute for our souls. They keep us rooted and grounded in the ways of Jesus. But I think it's so important to like really just talk about how you figure out which one is best for you.
Right.
And I would say, I'm going to read this to you. But I would say, like, the first question that you probably need to ask is, who do you want to become?
Yeah.
Who do you want to be like? Do you want to be like Jesus? Well, then root your life in his ways.
Right, yeah.
But I want to read this. This is from the library as well, where I go to school. It says this: a rule of life is a commitment to live your life in a particular way. It's meant to be crafted with prayer and discernment in partnership with God as you consider the way God made you and the values he's inscribed upon your heart. Once written, it serves as a tool that can help you make decisions for your life, determine how best to order your days. The first example of a Christian rule of life came from the Desert Fathers, a monastic community of mystics living in Egypt around the 3rd century AD. The most well-known rule of life is the Rule of St. Benedict, written 1,500 years ago, which was created to help his community of monks translate their faith into habits and rhythms of their shared daily life. His famous rule has inspired many communities and individuals to develop their own rules with similar intention. I cannot emphasize this enough. Our ways of life have that similar, we have that mindset. It's a similar intention that we want to translate our lives with God into daily rhythms more than we want to translate them into one-time, one-off experiences.
Right.
Those experiences with God happen in the middle of the rhythms.
Yeah.
And I think it's so, so important that when you're starting to think about a rule of life or a way of life, it serves no other purpose than to form you into the image of Jesus. It's
Right.
not a legalistic thing. If you make it legalistic, it's because you're legalistic.
Right, yeah.
Like anything can be made legalistic.
It's one of those things where it's not innately legalistic to have ways of life.
Yeah.
But if you view at it through the lens of legalism, it'll be legalistic.
Right. It's Bishop Chris Green, he says it like this. Traditions don't hold God together, they hold us together.
Right.
And what you are doing is you are now, it's kind of hard to think about. In 15 years from now, our ways of life will be almost traditional to us.
Yeah.
And I think it's so important that we note that these hold us together. They do not hold God together.
Right.
So what that means is if our church community is in a different place and needs to be actively doing other things 15 years from now, and the Spirit says this to us,
Right.
we can change it.
Right. Yeah.
We can change it. And so I think it's so important to just note some of those things there.
Yeah. Now that we've kind of addressed like what a way of life is, and
The parachute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How does one start forming a way of life or a rule of life? It's like we have ours, obviously. But I think that you and I would both agree that one of the worst things that like a person or a church can do is look at something that another church is doing and just apply the formula.
Yeah.
And so, how would you say, if you're listening to this and you say, I need some ways of life, I need some rules of life, where should they start on forming those?
Yeah. So I think this starts in the place of prayer. Like when you're forming a rule of life or your ways of life, you really need to ask God, like, hey, what do I need to be doing?
Right.
Like, what do I need to be doing? Like, what do I need to be doing what active things do I need to be doing that will help shape me into your image as you show up and meet me in these moments?
Yeah.
Like, what is that? And so I think the first thing that you start with is going to the place of prayer and asking the question,
Yeah.
what do I feel the Spirit saying to me? And like here, our ways of life, we've already mentioned them. We'll mention them again. We gather on Sunday, live in community, prioritize family, give generously, serve our neighbor.
Right.
We have a way of life here. And really and truly, this took years to form.
Yeah.
Years. Like even going back to the Hope Unlimited church days.
Yeah.
You have to understand a lot of times who you're not supposed to be.
Yeah. I still I was here day one of the church and like thinking through all of the different mission statements and visions and pillars and all of the different terminology that we used, to figure out who we are and where we were going. So it really was a process. It didn't just hatch overnight,
And I think really what happens is like these things that we have here at our church, they are practices that we are calling the people of Knoxville into.
Right.
Because they are practices that we as a church body feel that we are called into.
Right.
We don't just throw these on the wall. These are things that we do. We already do these things.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Like, and we believe that when we kind of get off, when we lean one direction or the other, when we sway, if we will come back and just refocus,
right,
we will pick up where this rhythm last left off.
Right.
And I think when you're thinking about your rules of life, your ways of life, ask, like, here's something. And this is kind of getting ahead in the notes,
sure,
but I think it's important to state here. Simplify your life, subtract things from your life, and then see what's left with you and God.
Right.
Live your life just focused on the things of God for a month.
Right.
Don't focus on anything else. Don't
Yeah.
go out to eat unless you're going with friends to live in community. Don't spend money on unnecessary things.
Right.
Like, just focus on, man, I live inside the kingdom of God. And what does that actually look like? And as we begin to do that as a church, it really began to be very clear to us.
Right.
We gather on Sunday. We live in community. We prioritize our family. We give super generously, and we serve the world around us.
Yeah.
That's what we do inside of God. Those are our true north.
Mm-hmm.
We're practicing these every single week.
And I think that speaks to something that you had brought up before, and I'm probably going to butcher this quote, but we were talking about values, and it really does speak to the ways of life as well, and even to what you just said about simplifying and subtracting, where it's you don't decide your values, you discover them.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I think in the process of simplifying and subtracting, a big part of that is discovering what those essential ways of life are.
Yeah.
And then less just trying to decide what you value and more of discovering it and kind of building your life around that.
Yeah, it's so important. I think too, like, and really, like, and truly, I think it's so important for people to get this, is that when you simplify and subtract your life, and you really like take a deep look at your life, and you're like, what does my life inside of God look like? Mm-hmm. When you do those things, I think it becomes so clear.
Yeah.
I think it becomes so clear.
Yeah. Now, you kind of hit two practical things with the subtract and simplify. What are two spiritual things?
Yeah, I think so.
That we can tack onto that.
Yeah, so there's two really things that come to mind just off the top of my head. And this is active and passive all at the same time. I think you have to soak in whatever rule of life or ways of life. You have to literally like submerge yourself in it.
Yeah.
So like, for instance, there is like when you make tea, like you steep the tea.
Yeah.
But there's also another technique, I don't know what it's called, but it's like you'll like put the tea in, then you'll take it out, you put it in, take it out. I don't know what it's called. Well, like, it's very, very, very clear when you let the tea just steep.
Yep.
It's much stronger.
Right.
It's much stronger. And I think a lot of times what Christians do is that they will go in and go out, and go in and go out, and they'll go in and they'll go out, and they won't understand why they're not as strong in their faith.
Right.
And I'll be strong in their faith. Like, why can I not just commit to these rules of life?
Right.
Why can't I commit? And like for me, for instance, like my order, the Order of St. Anthony, me praying in the morning, praying in the evening. There are parts of me that feel like I'm missing something.
Right.
When I'm not doing that. Just is. And I think it's so important for us to spiritually baptize yourself into a particular rule or way of life. And then this is a little bit different, and I don't think people would expect this answer. But like, I think slowing down is one of the most spiritual things you can do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Slow down. Like, okay, this is what...
Here's the counterculture part of the episode.
Yes.
I told you I'm going to say it almost every time.
But also, this is the hardest thing for me to do.
100%.
So slow your life down.
Yeah.
Meaning, clear your calendar.
Yeah. Like, practically slow down.
Yeah. And there's a great book. It's called 3 Mile an Hour God. The whole premise of the book is you have to slow down to catch up with God because our world moves too fast.
Yeah.
And so if I were to give people just advice in general in the aspect and in the context of making a rule of life, that's the question you ask, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Making a rule of life, some spiritual stuff, some practical stuff. It really would be to, baptize yourself into it.
Yeah.
Slow down, allow God to do a work in you inside of it, and then subtract and simplify your life. And so I think that's a good spot to kind of close this one off.
Yeah.
Is that if you want these things, if you want what we're going to talk about in the next few episodes, so like the active side of things and then the passive side of things, if you want spiritual formation to become so real to you, if you want to be able to like have a journal in it today, day one, and then a year from now, you look in it and you read day one and you're like, man, I've come so far.
Right.
God's done such a deep work in me. I think you have to get into a rule of life. You have to have something that catches you
right
when you're free falling in our culture.
And even kind of going back to the Biltmore Gardens that we talked about in the previous episode, in the previous session, is I really believe that the ways of life also can help become to be that trellis that moves and shapes you.
They absolutely. It's not that they become to be; it's that they are.
Right.
They are, and so I think it's really, really, really important that we jump into a rule of life to allow ourselves to be active in our pursuit of God, but also we're slow enough to allow him to do the deep work in us that he wants to do.
Right.
So, yeah, that's it, I think, for this episode. We're going to jump into some really, really, really just like, tell me some stuff to do, Cole.
Yeah.
Like, tell me some stuff that I need to go do.
We are approaching session 4, and you've not ordered anyone to do anything yet.
Yeah.
So this is what the people want. Tell them what to do. Listen, you and I, we're both pastors. We know what the people want. They want us to give them clear direction on what exactly to do.
Isn't it so funny? That I am the one that am sitting here 4 episodes in. I haven't told anybody a single thing really to do yet. I've just kind of told you what happens if you do things.
This is just so, something that Michaela hates about me is I have this deep need to preface almost everything that I say. All we've done is a 3-episode long preface before we start telling people what to do.
Yeah. And so, hey, listen, spiritual formation, we're about to really get into the nitty-gritties of what will form you over the course of your life.
Yeah.
We're about to get down into the stuff.
And we will see you there in session 4.
See you in like 32 seconds.
Yeah, give or take.
Yeah.